Brandon Sproat looked good in his MLB debut, but Hunter Greene was simply much better.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Well, a disappointing series loss for the New York Mets. They take the first game of their set against the Reds, and then they had the two top prospects slated for the final couple games of this series. A lot of excitement about what those guys could provide, and I think both Jonah Tong and Brandon Sproat pitched relatively well in their starts, but the Mets lineup was just completely blanked by a couple of veteran starting pitchers. Maybe not blanked, that might not be the right word because the Mets did scratch some runs, but they were shut down by Brady Singer and by Hunter Greene, particularly Greene today. I mean, we'll talk about Brandon Sproat first, but the reality is this is a game where I understand the frustration that the Mets were not able to win this series. I'm not very frustrated that they lost this game because Hunter Greene, that's as good of a pitching performance we've seen against the Mets all season. I mean, Hunter Greene was absolutely disgusting. He was dotting 100 wherever he wanted it. His slider just is on a string. It's not an easy at bat for anybody. And I think it was impressive the Mets even got one against him with Brett Baty hitting the home run. That was a very impressive swing by Baty to get one out. Granted, it was a slider that got a lot of the play, but just it's such an uncomfortable at bat, you know, with Hunter Greene, where it's tough to even be able to identify that a slider is coming and you know, square it out the way Baty did. But ultimately, that's why the Mets lose this game. It's not Brandon Sproat's fault, but he does take the loss. I still want to just focus on Brandon Sproat in this debut because I thought he showcased a lot of potential. I think he's a very different pitcher than Jonah Tong, so it's sort of interesting to watch them navigate the same lineup back to back. And I think for Tong, you know, we watched how the Reds were able to sit fastball and they ended up burning him simply on a couple swings on some elevated fastballs. Brandon Sproat does have a good fastball. It's not as good as Jonah Tong, certainly. It doesn't play as well up in the zone, but he does throw very hard. But for Sproat, it was all about the breaking balls. I mean, he has three distinct breaking balls, a sweeper, a slider, and a curveball. All obviously have different shapes to them. The sweep with that really big east to west movement. You have the different, the vertical drop of the curveball, and then a sort of tighter slider, a little more cutterish. And his ability to throw all the breaking balls for strikes is, I think, really impressive and encouraging because he's got a lot of counters. He's got a lot of different ways he can attack lineups, and it is again a very distinct contrast to Tong, where that fastball is sort of everything for Tong, and it's a matter now of trying to figure out what that he can have in his arsenal that will get people off the fastball so he can just keep going to the well and getting swing and miss with it. Whereas with Sproat, if something's not working, he can go with a completely different game plan. I wasn't expecting to see him go really kind of away from his four seam, but maybe he watched Jonah Tong get burned and decided to really focus more on the breaking balls. It's pretty impressive if you look at the arsenal. 24 sinkers, 19 curveballs, 19 sweepers, 11 four-seam fastballs, 8 changeups, 7 sliders. So of his 88 pitches, only 35 of them were fastballs. So he really did lean into the breaking balls all game long, and he didn't give up a hit until the 6th inning. Now, he did give us some hard-hit balls, so it's not like he was just untouchable, but he was in the zone enough. He did issue some leadoff walks, but he really did, I think, impress. And here you have another rookie making it through 6 innings. And the veterans, again, they just can't even buy an out in the 5th, sometimes the 6th inning. And you're lucky if you really get some of the veterans to 5. So I think that's been the most impressive thing from all these young guys. It's just each of them is going out there and giving you a lot of length in these starts. And for Sproat, this is still a quality start. So when it comes down to how he navigated each inning. First inning, leadoff walk. Then Brett Baty makes a great play, ranging to his left on a ground ball that looked to be, destined for left field, like it was going to get past Baty and through the hole. Baty makes that play, quick turn. All of a sudden, Brandon Sproat isn't out away from getting through his first inning, and he does so on a strikeout and picked up that strikeout on a backdoor curveball that he dotted. Really impressive pitch. Second inning, 1-2-3 frame, and he got a couple of outs on some hard hit balls. Line drives hit to Pete Alonso to open up the inning, to Brett Baty to close the inning, but puts up a 0. Third inning, issues a leadoff walk, but then he struck out the next 3 batters. That was probably the most impressive inning that he had. The first strikeout, I believe, was Brian Hayes. A really good just front door sweeper where he starts that pitch at his hip and just buckles him. Basically staples his feet to the ground where he's just like, I can't even offer at it, and it bends right over the inside corner. So really good pitch there. Had another strikeout on a curveball to a lefty to end that inning, a backdoor curveball that again dotted on that outside corner. So his ability to locate the strike zone with those breaking balls, I think, was the most impressive thing in this start. Fourth inning, Sproat again, leadoff walk. That was Noelvi Marte, who stole second base, ground that advance into third, and then he scored on a sacrifice fly. So that's the first run that he gives up. If he doesn't issue a walk, maybe he wouldn't have given up anything through those first 4. So obviously those leadoff walks will eventually bite you. And again, he was issuing a lot of walks early in those innings, but then settling in nicely. Fifth inning, the walk that he actually issued was the third bad that he faced after getting a couple of outs, but then he picked up his 5th strikeout of the day to put up another 0. Sixth inning was the one where he ends up giving up a couple runs and ultimately loses him the game. He gave up a broken bat single for the first hit that he allowed. That was with 1 out in the 6th inning. Then Elly De La Cruz got him. It wasn't even a terrible pitch, but Elly went down to get a breaking ball and split the gap in right center field, and that ends up scoring a run. To be honest, though, I think if Tyrone Taylor was playing center field in this game instead of Cedric Mullins, I think there might be a couple less runs for the Reds, because that sac fly was very shallow in the 4th inning. And I think if you had even Jeff McNeil out there, you might have been able to get the runner out. Noelvi Marte does fly, but it was I think if you had the threat of Tyrone Taylor's arm, I don't know if Marte even goes for it. And then that ball that, again, split the gap, I think you would have had a play if it wasn't Cedric Mullins in center, but he has such a noodle for an arm that you just were pretty much burned in those instances. But I think what was impressive for Sproat is after blowing the lead, giving up 2 runs, it's 3-1 now in the 6th inning, and you got the bullpen finally stirring behind him where he might not get out of the inning, and he settled in and stopped the bleeding, got 2 strikeouts to get out of that inning. So I thought that was a really impressive thing for Sproat to just still find his way through 6. It's a quality start. 3 hits, 3 earned runs, 4 walks, 7 strikeouts. Absolutely earned another one. I'll be looking forward to watching Jonah Tong and Brandon Sproat next weekend and see what they can do. But for the Mets, again, you lose the series. And even though I think this particular game was just one that was very tough to win with the way Hunter Greene threw the baseball, you did have a chance in the 9th inning to do something, and they didn't get the job done. So what I want to talk about to close out the show here in the next segment is we'll talk about Hunter Greene. We'll talk about the Mets offense and where they're now at in this wild card race after dropping this game and also dropping the season series to the Reds. They now have the tiebreaker as well. So that's another little component that makes this even more of an unfortunate loss. So we're going to go through all that stuff here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have a full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch, and you start to realize where you are losing money each month from subscriptions I had that I didn't even realize I was paying for each month and wasn't using, or once you start noticing how much that takeout adds up time after time, you start to realize maybe it's better to cook at home. Don't let the financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use Locked On MLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code Locked On MLB. If you're watching on YouTube right now, I really do appreciate it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. Now, Hunter Greene in this game was just dominant. I mean, struck out the first 5 batters that he faced. First time through the lineup, he struck out 7 of 9. The 2 exceptions, Jeff McNeil grounded out, and Brett Baty hit that home run. And then all else that Greene would issue throughout the rest of the game, he would give up a walk in the 4th inning to Brennan Nimmo with 2 outs, and he issued a leadoff walk to Pete Alonso in the 7th inning. But after that leadoff walk in the 7th, he struck out the next 3 batters, struck out 12 on the day, gave up just 1 hit. I understand that it's really frustrating the Mets lost this game, but I don't know what they could have done against Hunter Greene. I really don't. It's almost as if they needed to win on Saturday to have won this series. And if Jonah Tong doesn't get burned by the home run ball, if the Mets are able to be a little more aggressive late in that game and score some runs, maybe they would have been able to pull something out. But they get burned by the home run ball with Tong on the mound. And then in this one, the Reds just scratched 3 across. And the only way that they were going to win this game, honestly, is if Brandon Sproat was perfect. If Brandon Sproat was able to get through 6 innings, giving up 1 or no runs, and then you win it late. But unfortunately, he got burned a little bit in that last inning. And broken bat, then a double by Ellie De La Cruz, and you end up losing the game. But I thought that Sproat threw the ball well. I thought that there was just nothing the Mets could have done against Hunter Greene. And you end up taking a rough series loss here. And again, that now gives the Reds the tiebreaker on the season against the Mets. Now, I don't think all of a sudden you have to be really overly concerned about the playoff picture, because these other teams are in the position that they're in for a reason. I mean, the Reds are sitting here after this victory. What are they, 2 games over 500? Let me pull up the standings real quick and see exactly where we're at now. The Reds sitting at 72 and 71. Is that after this game, or is Google not updating this quickly? Yeah, 72 and 71. So, and the Giants, we'll see if the Giants are winning right now. Last I checked, they were losing 3-0 here. Oh, wow, they have now made it 4-3. So the Giants are rallying back in this a little bit. If they lose, they'd also be 72 and 71. If they win, then they would go to 3 games back of the Mets in this race. But these are teams that are barely over 500. Now, the Mets are now 9 games over, so you definitely have to be worried with the Phillies series coming up. Just, okay, what's this going to look like in a couple days? Because the Phillies have been just rolling ever since the Mets swept them. They did not miss a beat. They did not fall back at all. They just won. They just kept on winning every series. They're they're losing 5-3 to the Marlins right now. So the Marlins might get 1 against them, but the Phillies still won that series. And best case scenario, you're going into this set against the Phillies 7 games back in the division. So the division's out, but can the Mets at this point just finish a 500 road trip? Honestly, can you go into Philly and take 2? And if you can, I almost think that would be a win, because I don't think that the Mets at that point are going to lose any significant amount of ground in this wild card race. And then you have a good homestand and you set yourself up for that final road trip where you're going to go up against the Cubs and the Marlins. And we'll see. You don't want this season to come down to that series in Miami at the end of the year being that important where you have to win every game. But at the end of the day, in this series against the Reds, I think you just ran into 2 hot pitchers. And sometimes that's going to happen. But how do you bounce back? And for the Mets, they're going to have to really step up in Philadelphia to avoid putting themselves in a dangerous spot. If the Phillies beat up on the Mets and you have the Reds or one of these teams that starts to win a little bit, it can get close. It can get dicey. And I think the Mets are still in this position where you have two different ends of the spectrum with your starting pitchers, which is not the best place to be in. Either you're looking at these youthful guys, these top prospects who have the ability to be dominant, but you also have the rookie learning curve, and that's a steep one. And we saw Jonah Tong, I think, have to endure that in yesterday's start. So you have that side of it with half of your rotation. The other side of it is these starting pitchers who just seem like they're like worn out. It just seems like David Peterson is exhausted, or that Sean Manaea gets fatigued in his starts, or Clay Holmes, who is taking this incredible innings leap this year, just doesn't have that much left in the tank. And so those guys maybe start off an outing good, but can't really put it together the whole way through and get you through 6. So it's just inconsistency from the rotation. And if there's one thing that'll do in the Mets this season, it's that. I understand that this particular series, it was the bats that cost the Mets, but I think it really was just how good the starting pitchers were for the Reds. I mean, particularly Hunter Greene in this one. Like I said, you can be frustrated the Mets lost this series, but losing this game, it was one where it felt more like the Reds beat the Mets with the way Hunter Greene pitched rather than the other way around. Granted, they did have a chance in that 9th inning, which I haven't even gotten to. Juan Soto did homer in the 9th inning to make it a 3-2 game. Pete Alonso reached on an error, and then Brandon Nimmo got a base hit. But Starling Marte was the man up in a situation where a double play ends the game, and I hate to say that I might have, willed that into existence, because that's certainly not what I wanted, but it was definitely on my mind, and broken bat double play ends the ball game for the Mets. So that is the scoop on this series. Obviously frustrating. You beat the Tigers. I think you were in a position where maybe you should have swept that series. And now all of a sudden you've lost 3 or 4. And this road trip is even up on the record side of things. And you have a 4-game set in Philly coming up. So tough stretch for the Mets. We'll see what happens next. I'll have a full show for you guys tomorrow morning. Really do appreciate all of you who tuned into the stream.